I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. We have all 5 board members present, but in different ways. So, Jen, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
Jen is with us via Zoom, and Carol, you can hear us okay?
Yes.
And Carol's going to be over the telephone, and Mr. Jackson, Ms. Weiser, and myself will be in person. So we will move to item 4, call to the audience. Would anyone like to address the board this evening? No one would like to address the board. Item 5 are reports, and we only have one report this evening from our superintendent, Dr. Dorner.
All right. Mr. President, members of the board, I'm just going to read a statement, and my statement will apply as my board report, and then any questions you have can come during item 14. I'll try to read it through the mask. KUSD Governing Board, staff, community members, and those who are watching via live stream. This week marks the 1-year anniversary since our team first received word that schools would temporarily close due to the COVID-19 virus. Little did we know in March of 2020, the year ahead would be filled with news conferences, executive orders, mandates, a plethora of emotions on divided sides of an issue. It was not often during the past year our community, either locally, nationally, or internationally, agreed upon the best set of procedures or circumstances. The only thing that remained constant in the past year was a lack of consistency. When we don't know what to expect, it's really difficult on anybody in any situation. And considering all that we've been through, this anniversary doesn't feel very celebratory like most anniversaries are, but it is. There is much to celebrate. The staff, families, and students of KUSD showed up all year. When we couldn't open our doors last summer due to live learning, the staff showed up, equipped with a camera, microphone, last-minute training, a class list, and some phone numbers. They showed up for students. The custodians showed up and kept our environment sanitized. The facilities crews showed up and maintained our school environments. The bus drivers showed up and delivered meals, sometimes parking for hours in the hot summer heat to give every neighborhood child an opportunity to eat. Many parents showed up. They did their best to balance work and school life, support their children, and keep food on their own tables. They voiced their questions and opinions and advocated for what they believed. They showed up. We didn't always agree, but they demonstrated, our parents, their investment in their children's lives. Many of them showed up. Many students showed up to the best of their ability in uncertain situations without teachers to constantly keep them motivated inside their classrooms at home instead of in school. They still showed up. When we felt it was safe to bring in half the students for half the time on an AB schedule, staff again showed up with in-person lessons for something the students to do in the classroom and then something for students to do at home. Double the work. Even those who felt anxious, unsafe, and not fully prepared for the challenge at hand, they still found engaging ways to have lessons, build relationships in socially distant environments free from visible smiles and facial expressions, something we as humans rely on considering communication is 80% nonverbal. All of that happened in our classroom, 50% of the students at a time, and regardless of the personal battles being waged behind the scenes, our student-centered staffs showed up. When we knew holiday celebrations might lead to higher positivity rates and scaled back to a virtual setting for 2 weeks, once again, staff, family, and students showed up, pitching in and doing their best in an undesirable situation. During the last 7 weeks of our AB schedule, our staff continued to show up, and not only to show up, but to engage in bell-to-bell instruction, creative lessons, and awesome activities, twice to ensure both A and B students all experienced the same learning. I visited schools, as has Mrs. Woolsey, and enjoyed watching them host a climate of building relationships, readathons taking place in beautiful jungle settings, Dr. Seuss-filled hallways, laughter-filled cafeterias, hands-on science labs, research learning centers, career days, virtual field trips to zoos and industrial parks, and brain-stretching math labs. They showed up. And I am reminded, as we all should be, that there is plenty to celebrate. There's teamwork, commitment, creativity, support, mindfulness, friendship, and learning. We should embrace our growth and how far we made it from 1 year ago. Our story is one of success and perseverance. We stuck through it together, even when we didn't agree, felt anger, found ourselves divided, and even landed on polar opposite sides of an issue. We put each other and students first. It wasn't easy, but we showed up. Last week, about the same time we left for spring break a year ago, Governor Ducey announced a new executive order. Now, instead of using the dashboard we've grown accustomed to checking every Thursday, the governor announced it was time to get students back into schools. All schools should offer in-person learning. We should prioritize getting elementary students back into school. And then he also reiterated the importance of providing a safe place to learn for any and all students requesting space to work at school. Tonight, we must decide the direction KUSD is headed for the final 9 weeks of the school year and decide whether it's time to return all students to campus. For families enrolled in our online program for various reasons, including being or feeling at risk or unable to attend live classes, of course, the online program will continue through the end of the year. For the rest of our students, we must decide if our mitigation strategies have been successful and if we can continue to provide a safe learning environment for all students at one time. KUSD numbers have remained below 1% and even below 0.5% consistently since we returned from break. At this time, we have 3 students and 0 positive staff members. As mentioned by a board member in a previous meeting, we can't be completely certain there are only 3 students and 0 staff because many may not have tested. But right now, that's all we have reported in our schools. I had to double check when I pulled up our dashboard for staff because it was empty. And I thought something happened. So I had to have Star check. She called every school and checked with HR because I thought these numbers can't be right. It is safe to say, though, these are some facts from KUSD. Our numbers are consistently showing few to no positives regularly. We continue to contact trace and quarantine as necessary. And even sometimes we engage in passionate and powerful conversations with people who don't agree to the definition of contact tracing and quarantining, but we check the health department every time to make sure we're consistent. Our mask mandate remains in place, and we continue to appreciate those who voice concerns if they see or observe where it is not being fully and compliantly followed, and we will address it immediately. We socially distance ourselves to the best of our ability, and that's what the CDC recommends. 6 feet is still recommended, but they always say the best that you can. And even in Governor Ducey's new executive order, if possible, 6 feet, when possible, 6 feet. Our COVID custodians remain on active duty, and you'll hear from Mr. Sherman at the workshop on the 19th. I believe we're proposing for that to continue through next year. I'm excited to announce that we recently hosted a vaccination clinic right here in this building using our offices. A couple of you may have participated in that. We had every district staff member had the opportunity to be vaccinated if they haven't already done so. There were 400 people that came through our building in 2 days. In less than 28 days from the days of the vaccination, we'll have round 2. And that gives me pride to know that if someone wanted the vaccination, they had access to it. That was a huge mountain to climb, and we appreciate the National Guard for working with us. In a meeting this morning, all principals report a majority of staff members, or a majority, keep in mind, are ready for all students to be present. I do need to say, though, at every school, there are staff members who feel finishing the year in the AB schedule is good and a good idea for consistency, both for students and for staff, and it is an important point for consideration. While most parents want students to return, there are some students and parents who agree also that we should finish using an AB model because small group instruction is working. and because they are weary of their lives being altered. Again, it's an important point to be considered. Many seniors have gone to work and no longer feel coming to school 4 days, and in some cases at all, is viable. And I think that's something we need to work on with our seniors should we go back to all students. Some of them are also worried about graduation, which I'll talk about in a moment. If we continue AB and have to add all students who need a safe place to learn, as Governor Ducey mentioned last week, we will end up with an off-balance mixture of students, kind of like we did early last fall, which may lead to teachers offering 4 days of lessons to most and side lessons to others. I find that troublesome because they've spent their entire year providing multiple ways and multiple opportunities for students to learn. To me, focusing on one whole group will reduce the additional planning and delivery options and allow them to plan a single lesson. Students will experience, if we go back with all students, a 4-day week prior to exiting for the summer. I mean, if we think about an entire year of topsy-turvy schedules, and I can tell you there's some bad habits have been formed, bad attendance habits have been formed for an entire year. To me, it seems, and many principals and many staff members, it seems beneficial to work on reversing those habits during this 9 weeks so that when we have our summer break and we come back in July, we've worked on that stamina of 4 days. All students would then, if we come back live with all students, be here for the mandated AZ merit tests. As you know, we did not receive a waiver from the federal government for those tests. And as we recently experienced with benchmarking, part of the kids come on one of the days and the other part of the kids come on a second day, and that doubles the time that we have to be giving our precious time to testing versus instruction. Finally, to the seniors who have worked for 13 years to reach their graduation dates, and we're so proud of each and every one of you, and you were worried about spring and graduation ceremonies, we do plan, as I mentioned to the board in a previous email, to host live events. Even if we need safety modifications, we plan to host graduation ceremonies with family. So in closing, KUSD Governing Board, there's much to consider and a big decision to be made this evening. The outcome will not please all stakeholders. This we have learned consistently over the year. But we are committed to working with any staff member or family who needs additional support should the decision not meet their needs to end the year successfully. We've made it this far. We have much to celebrate. It's my hope we remain committed to one another and our families in a manner that represents where we left for a break a year ago.
Thank you, Dr. Dorner. And you want questions at agenda item
14, yeah,
12.
whatever it is, yeah.
14's adjourned.
14,
So
I'll take them at 14.
that was a great report, and it's mind-blowing that it's been a year. I remember going with you to Sarabat when we were watching them hand out meals to students, wondering how it was going to work, and it's amazing that it was a whole year ago. Wow. Okay, we have no board reports. Item 6 is the approval of the routine orders of business.
I'll make a motion for approval of routine orders of business.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Shumley.
You traveled to the AIA legislative meeting that already occurred?
Yes, it was last Friday.
So this isn't really an approval, it's more of a check writing?
I think sometimes when we approve travel in a district, it occurs afterwards just because it wasn't available on the last meeting date.
Okay, I just thought board travel was separate than district travel, so I thought it would be approved differently.
No, I think it's appropriate to go on the consent agenda, but any board member can pull an item from the consent agenda if they want.
Well, it's already happened, so that doesn't really matter, but I just want to make sure it's consistent going forward. So from now on, all board travel will just be on the consent agenda.
On the consent agenda, I think in the past, if it's been more of a larger trip or a trip that maybe travel or consists of airfare or something like that, then the board member might want to put it on the not on the consent agenda.
So it's up to the board member that's traveling on where it goes on the agenda.
I think it's up to, usually Dr. Dorn and myself set the agenda. So if we had any questions, we'd probably contact that board member. And if it's on the consent agenda and there's a board member that feels it shouldn't be on there, they're more than welcome to pull it
All
and
right,
do it as a separate item. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 7, approve benchmark education, advanced language learning K-5 curriculum to be on display for the required 60 days. Mrs.
Mr.
Woolsey.
President, members of the board, this curriculum will be for our English language learners. We're asking for our approval tonight.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Ms. Woolsey or a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 8 is for discussion only, book on display for the required 60 days beginning this evening.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a supplemental, a book to use as a supplemental material for several different classrooms in high school level.
Any questions? And the book's back there if we want to take a look at it.
Correct.
Okay. Item 9, approve letter to Superintendent of Public Instruction that requests recalculation of state aid in light of Transwestern Pipeline litigation.
Mr. President, members of the board, approval here with signatures from board members who are present. This sets up a letter that in case there is no legislation and the district does have to pay the $607,000 in back taxes, that we are making a request to the state for them to recalculate our money so that we essentially are held harmless on that. That's just one of a few ways that this could be solved. Legislation still has a chance of making its way through that would hold districts completely harmless and not need the recalculation of state aid. But this puts this letter in place and gives us the options we need moving forward. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Sherman?
It's just bringing up a memory of, we dealt with this a few years ago.
And this has been going on for several years.
Yeah.
Takes a long time.
Yeah,
The lawsuit started in 2016.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 10, approve district recommendation for award of RFP 21-11-26 for wide area network services in accordance with applicable regulation for the year beginning July 1, 2021.
Mr. President, members of the board, we went out to bid for the wide area network services, and doing so actually saved the district a lot of money moving forward, as much as $4,000 per month. So we're excited about this agreement. It will be for 1 year with the, we're allowed to renew every year for 4 additional years. And we'll bring that to the board every year. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Sherman?
I just wanted to have it stated what this ends up being used for.
Robbie's here. This is basically our connection for all of our schools. And another piece of going out to bid again is that we got dedicated connections for 2 of our schools that didn't have dedicated connections before. So it's just basically our internet, if I understand correctly, district-wide.
Just a comment that that's an outstanding initiative by the staff. Thank you.
We're very happy about it.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve
I'll second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11, approve IGA with KPD to provide a school resource officer split between Manzanita and KMS.
Mr. President, members of the board, the school safety grant is back now, right? We have it at Kingman High, and now we're getting these two schools as well. This is an IGA with the city. It outlines what we'll pay for the officer over the time of the 5 years, and it outlines everything. It's already been approved by the city. I may have made a mistake in the writing. So sorry, I got a little disjointed there. So I'll take any questions.
Any questions or a motion?
Make a
This-
motion to approve.
We have a motion,
Second.
second by Ms. Weiser. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to clarify, this is covered with a grant?
Yes.
Awesome.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 12, information discussion and possible action on the most recent COVID data and return to learn strategies.
And that whatever decision we make, we stay with for consistency purposes through the last day of school.
Okay, and Dr. Dorn will take questions now. Can you talk about your meeting with the staff? You said the majority of was it staff or building principals?
I met with building principals this morning, and I asked them, as I do every month, what's the
We can't hear Gretchen.
Sorry, Jen, I had pushed the off button. I'll just start over. I met with principals this morning, as I do every month, and asked them the same question, where their staff stands, how they're feeling about the strategies that are in place. We talk about some or all of the strategies and how they feel things are going. We've also been walking through the campuses and having informal conversations with, varieties of staff members, from teachers to support personnel. This morning, all of the principals reported that they have more staff in favor of all students returning, but we always do discuss, because every staff opinion does matter. And we're never going to have 100% consensus, but we want to know how the majority feels and what the minority is feeling concerned about. There are still folks who are concerned, less than before, since we've been able to offer vaccinations, about transmission of the virus. There are some, especially at the secondary level, who worry students that if there's an outbreak, that could affect graduation or spring activities. So some of them do feel a little safer with the AB due to movement at secondary. So those pods of opinions still exist, but the principals report that the majority are ready for students to return.
And looking at the paperwork that you had, the dashboard and everything
Yes.
that you had sent us.
The new
for-
executive order links, yes.
Right. That Mojave County is still in us doing hybrid.
Substantial yet coming down. Yes, and I will tell you, the governor's executive order and press conference, and I know it's being recorded, and if he wants to watch it and ask me, he can, but it rarely matches what then comes out on the dashboard. Verbiage is used during a press conference, and then it looks a little different when you look at the dashboard. I did attend, I think I put that in my notes to you, a meeting with Superintendent Hoffman and the other superintendents. And the representative from the state said, as always, we should use the dashboard to inform our decision, but it's not dependent on that.
Mr.
I was
Mr.
just gonna
Jacks,
say
do
where I'm feeling. Question?
you want to yield your time to go ahead,
Oh,
Beth?
no, 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 no.
I just wanted to say that how would it look if we were to delay going open all the way? I mean, can we wait until after these next shots, this next round of shots? Because that would be only, what, 2 weeks into the next quarter?
Yes.
So would it still be, that would give teachers and everybody time back to school? And then if they got sick during spring break, they would be reported at home and not infecting others versus boom, we come back and we're full. You know, would that upset the apple cart too much if we kind of
Extended
split
it?
it a little bit? You know, as far as come back on the same schedule, but they're, 2-3 weeks in, then we go to the full, because I'm assuming that that's the way people are, you're talking about, the majority want to go back full time.
I mean, there would be several things to consider. One, the AZ merit testing starts immediately upon our return. So that would extend that window because it would double, I'm guessing double up the time. I could get more information on that. I think teachers are looking for consistency. And I think maybe having all of the kids back just the final few weeks would probably be the most difficult. But we would have to ask them.
The school ends,
May 27th, yeah.
okay, so basically all of May,
Mhm.
but if we gave it to the first week of April and then the rest of that time is what I was thinking. Sorry, Roger?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Just, first of all, I think you did a great job looking at the situation and the analysis that you came up with. Seems to me like you covered everything, the pros and the cons. And having listened to that, I personally think that the pros outweigh the cons as far as going back to full in-person learning, even though it's a very difficult decision. But I think our percent positive rates, as you said, it has stayed very, very low. And your communications with the schools are more in favor of than not in favor of. Anyway, I think all that lines up as go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Jacks. I think that the district's done a great job with their mitigation strategies. And I know we'll continue to do that as best as we can. And I think we have an opportunity now to provide access to education for all students. So I think it's really important that we move to a full-time schedule after spring break, which would be on March 22nd.
I have a couple of things to say.
Okay, go ahead, Jen.
So Ducey, as always, is out of touch with rural communities, period. And I do hope he watches this because I would love to have a conversation with him. The educators in this town have had a very difficult time getting access to the vaccinations. Whether it is 2 people or 400 people that wanted to be vaccinated, they should have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated before we pack their classrooms with 36, 42 students. It doesn't matter how many are in the minority. If any of them don't feel safe and they have the opportunity to be immune to a pandemic, we should offer them that opportunity by giving them a few weeks to develop that immunity. To take that from them kind of goes with the direction the board has been leading them in, always being on the wrong side of the data or ignoring the data altogether. It kind of makes me laugh when y'all are saying, oh, but our numbers are so low. Our numbers were very high at one point and you ignored them. So it just blows my mind that you would even bring up data at this point, because it doesn't matter. And I know how this is going to go, because the majority does what the majority does. But I think we need to be considering those that finally have the opportunity, thanks to the shot clinic this past weekend, to provide security to these individuals, no matter how many there are, to fully be immune and be embracing their students again rather than being afraid of it. They have the opportunity to do that if we give them the time to do that. And I think we should. I think we owe it to them. That is what I have to say.
Okay,
May I make
Thank you,
one
Jen.
comment?
yes,
Just,
Dr.
you
Dorner.
mentioned 36 or 42 students. That is not our class ratio, not even close. Most of
Yeah,
our,
this year.
there may be a couple of classes, but I am happy to say we've maintained our staff and our numbers are low and they're much lower than our ratios, even when all kids are present. So I wanted to make that clarification.
Where are we at then?
I can
one,
send you a
one
full
second,
report.
Carol.
I could send you
Dr.
a full
Dorner.
report. I have it by every school and every teacher.
Are we in the 30s?
We are in the 20s more often than the 30s. Mr.
Okay.
Sherman?
Yes, Mr. Sherman, go
I
ahead.
just want to say our class ratios are such that at the board workshop, we're planning on proposing that we lower the board approved ratios by 2 students across all sections. And that won't cause a situation where a large group of people have to lose their jobs. We could largely do that through the situation we're in right now. So that could give you an idea of what our ratios actually look like rather than the 32 plus.
Okay, but
That's
that's
just a little bit of good news. I'm not disagreeing with you, Board Member Shumway.
Okay, I'm gonna let Ms. Young has a comment. Carol?
Yes, this is my opinion. I know we were concerned about outbreaks over Labor Day. We were concerned about outbreaks over Thanksgiving, over Christmas. We held off full schedule till the spring break and this meeting. And I know not everyone's been vaccinated, but they can still get the vaccination. And I am completely for putting our kids back in class all 4 days.
Thank you, Carol.
Mm-hmm.
Did we have any other comments or questions?
Just wanted to reiterate that,
Yes.
Dr. Dorner, you had said that according to what, Department of Ed
Governor Ducey?
and Superintendent Hoffman have said, our model right now does fit the executive order.
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that KUSD return to full in-person learning on March 22nd.
So, so we have a motion by Mr. Jack, second by Ms. Young, that KUSD return to full-time learning on March 22nd. Any discussion on the motion?
I'd just like to add that I'm going to be voting no because I want to give them those few couple weeks.
and
Okay.
I'm going to be voting no because I follow science and data.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion? Actually, we'll do a roll call vote. So all those in favor of the motion, Mrs. Young?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Jacks?
Aye.
Myself will be yes. Mrs. Weiser?
No.
Ms. Shumway?
No.
Motion passes 3-2. And now we are on item 13, approve the listed donations.
I'll make the motion to approve with our intense gratitude.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion
Passes 5-0. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.